So for this project, I'll be focusing on Lyle Thompson, the Indigenous lacrosse player. So here are his accolades. He's a two-time Tewaaraton Trophy winner. Uh, the Tewaaraton Trophy is from the Mohawk word for lacrosse. It has 6 points on the base of the trophy, which represent the Six Nations. But this is the equivalent of the Heisman Trophy in college football, so it's given to the best lacrosse player in the NCAA. So not only is Lyle the first Native American to win this trophy, but he is also the only player in the history of lacrosse to win it in consecutive years. So that's just first of his long resume of accomplishments in the lacrosse world. But throughout this presentation, we'll get a look into some of his off the field accomplishments. So Lyle was born September 9th, 1992, as the second youngest of five. His native name is Dehasunde, which translates to "He's flying over us." He grew up in Onondaga Nation, located in upstate New York. And growing up, Lyle didn't have a lot. Didn't have a lot of money. In fact, they didn't even have running water or electricity for the majority of his childhood. But what he did have was a very tight family and the sport of lacrosse. So Lyle gives a lot of credit to his parents for instilling their native culture into their family lives. They would practice their ceremonies and traditions growing up, in particular their language and songs. But the biggest thing for his parents was respect. So respect not only for their culture, but to other people, to nature, and even inanimate objects such as the lacrosse stick. So it is a Haudenosaunee tradition for a child to be given a wooden lacrosse stick at birth. So Lyle has talked about how his father emphasized respecting your lacrosse stick. So even to this day, Lyle never sleeps without his stick in his room. And when he was younger, he would even sleep with it in his bed. But what this shows is the spiritual connection that the Haudenosaunee players have with their stick and to their game. So Lyle's father played lacrosse for the Iroquois national team, so he was able to coach his sons in their backyard, as pictured in the bottom right. So this is where they would spend all their time, especially since they didn't have electricity in their house, so they would spend all their time outside playing lacrosse with each other. So at an early age, Lyle's father realized that Lyle was different than his other brothers and that he would be in the backyard every day later than his brothers, playing until there's no light left, and he would shovel the lawn in the winter when it snowed so that he could play. So Lyle continued to develop and was playing varsity lacrosse as an eighth grader. And his sophomore year, he led his high school to the state finals against the perennial powerhouse Manhasset High School. And even though they came up short, Lyle had 5 goals, and this is what really put his name on the map as a recruit. So that leads into his college recruitment. So historically, the only Division I college that had been successful in recruiting talent off of reservations had been Syracuse. They've had at least one Indigenous player on their roster since 1950, including Lyle's older brother Jeremy. So it was expected that Lyle would commit to play at Syracuse, but Lyle felt that Syracuse took his allegiance for granted, and they didn't recruit him that heavily. So Lyle shocked the country when he and his brother Miles both committed to the University of Albany, which historically hadn't really been a great program. But as Lyle says in a quote, "Before I committed, I never visited campus or anything. That just goes to show how the school didn't matter to us. All that mattered is that we had met Coach Marr and felt comfortable around his staff. It didn't matter how big or famous the program was, it was about playing lacrosse and having fun. Growing up, that's what it was all about." So the rest is history in terms of Lyle's success at Albany, as well as turning the program around as a whole, and we can still see that effect today. But however, Lyle's decision to not commit to Syracuse was also monumental to the younger lacrosse players on reserves, as he was a pioneer for Indigenous players to commit to D1 colleges other than Syracuse. So a few examples below is Zach Miller of Denver, Zed Williams, who went to UVA, and Frank Brown, who went to Hobart. And arguably more importantly, other than his effect of opening the door for players on reservations to explore other colleges, but Lyle really emphasized being an example of someone who went to college but came back to the reserve. So another quote from him, "A lot of natives that go off to school, they forget who they are. They forget their ways and their traditional values. I didn't want to lose that connection." So not only did Lyle not lose that connection, but he actually moved back to the Six Nations reservation after college, where he is very active in his community today and where he's raising his children. So we'll talk later about his effect on the reservations to a greater extent. So in the next slide, I'll be showing visual differences through lacrosse film about how Lyle plays the game versus mainstream lacrosse. But before that, I think it's important to give background of the history of the game and Lyle's relationship with it. So, as Lyle tells, before humans were on Earth, land animals and birds faced off in the sport. The creator found the game entertaining and passed it on to humans as a form of medicine, hence the nickname the medicine game, with the power to heal community disputes and nourish the ill. So fast forward to white settlers adopting the game as their own. So the French named it La Crosse in the 1600s because the sticks resembled those that bishops carried. And by the mid 1800s, the world had caught on to the game, and a Canadian organization formed in 1867, adding more rules and structure, giving the game its modern look. So the teams in this organization used to compete against native teams, but they eventually banned them for being too good. And when the first World Field Lacrosse Championship took place in 1968, the Iroquois Nationals were not included. So lacrosse continued to evolve into a college sport dominated by preppy East Coast kids predominantly. And lacrosse has continued to evolve, and it's growing more and more every year, getting farther and farther from its original form. But however, Lyle and other Indigenous players are trying to continue the game in its purest form. And this is very apparent in Lyle's play style. So modern lacrosse has developed a set of fundamentals that emphasize keeping two hands on your stick when you're shooting or passing or ground balls. And there's a lot of very structured schemes and an overall lack of creativity. But Lyle is known for his creativity. You rarely see him with two hands on a stick as he passes and shoots or throws behind the back or shovel shots. He even has a backhand shot named after him, the Tejas dunk, referring to his Native American name. So this has a lot to do with how Lyle approaches the game and his relationship with the game. So Lyle says that lacrosse isn't about stats or winning. He treats the game on a spiritual level, and he plays to entertain the creator and as a form of mental medicine. So he talks about how the game has experienced a loss of its original intentions, and he frames it in the idea of spirit versus sport. So a quote from Lyle: "Today, it's like hunting for sport. Hunting is a spiritual thing. You can go hunting and just enjoy being in a tree and waiting for deer to come. Or you can go out and hunt for sport. You get mad when you don't come back with something. You don't enjoy the process. That's unfortunate because that's where we are with the game of lacrosse." So he also talks about how lacrosse has turned into a way of making money and predicting future years, and there's no more pure enjoyment of the game, and it's turned into an attention and money grab. He also talks about how he's experienced a lot of pressure from people wanting him to take the game mainstream, especially given his status in the sport. He said that people around him have made him feel obligated to take this game to the next level, but as he says, "I never felt that's my duty. I simply want to honor the game. I want to be a part of its history." So as I show these clips, pay attention not only to the obvious differences in the physical play style, but I also want you to pay attention to the differences in demeanor and attitude. Because there's a big culture of playing with emotion and celebrating in mainstream lacrosse, but pay attention to Lyle and the other Indigenous players' reactions after their highlight plays. So this is Paul Rabel, who's been known as the poster child of modern lacrosse. So you see that he really just exploits his pure athleticism and size. There's not a lot of creativity in his game. He's just a pure athlete, and he's really become the face of modern lacrosse. So here we can see the celebrations. So now for Lyle Thompson. One hand shovel pass. Here's him in the professional level. This is the Tejas dunk. Another example of it. Here he is against Syracuse, assisting his brother Miles. Even with all the success that Lyle has experienced in the sport of lacrosse, it hasn't come without struggle. So in the top left is an image of the Haudenosaunee national team, and they've faced a lot of adversity in terms of being recognized as a sovereign nation in international play. So the Haudenosaunee issued their own passports in 1927, but they're not recognized as legal travel documents by the European Union. And this has caused issues in the past, such as when the Haudenosaunee Nationals were unable to compete in the 2010 World Lacrosse Championships in England. The International World Games Association excluded the Haudenosaunee Nationals also from the 2022 World Games because they didn't consider the team to be representative of a sovereign nation. However, a petition calling for the team's inclusion received 55,000 signatures, and the Irish national team dropped out to make room for the Haudenosaunee. The Haudenosaunee are also not recognized by the IOC because they don't have a National Olympic Committee or a government recognized by the United Nations. So this means that the Haudenosaunees must choose to play for the U.S. or Canada or not at all in the upcoming Olympics. But there has been support from government officials such as Joe Biden, who has publicly stated that the Haudenosaunee should be granted an exception given that the sport was invented by the Haudenosaunee people. In the bottom right is a picture of Lyle and his brother's hair. It is a Haudenosaunee tradition for boys to keep their hair long, and this has been a literal target on the back for Lyle Thompson in regards to racism. A particular incident in 2019 happened where the Philadelphia Wings announcer made the remark, quote unquote, "It's time to snip that ponytail." So this is just one of the hundreds of racist encounters Lyle has encountered in his lacrosse career. He says that most of the racism he experiences is a result of stereotypes, especially in regards to alcohol. But the irony behind this is that Lyle actually lives a sober life and abstains from all alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. Given the struggles Lyle has faced, he tries to give back as much as possible. He really uses his platform as a way to make a difference in the world. So he's been awarded the Wells Crowther Humanitarian Award by the PLL twice, but if you ask Lyle, he could not care less about awards. In the top left is a picture from the Dakota Access Pipeline protest in 2016, where Lyle went and organized a lacrosse game to bring positivity to the Standing Rock community, really using lacrosse for its original purposes. In the bottom left is a picture from the For the Future Foundation, which he co-founded with his brothers in 2019, and this charity creates programs for Indigenous and underserved youth that promote healthy lifestyles and student-athlete attributes. In the top right, you see Lyle sporting the orange Every Child Matters movement shirt, and Lyle also wore an orange ribbon in his braid to raise awareness for this movement, which honors the Indigenous children who attended residential schools in Canada. And in the bottom right, it shows a clinic hosted by the Thompson brothers lacrosse. This was co-founded with his brothers as well. And this company emphasizes the Indigenous roots of lacrosse and hosts lacrosse events, community building initiatives, and lacrosse developmental projects. In the process of creating this project, I did a lot of research and found so much information that I couldn't fit into this video. So I have created a guide for further research in the topic for anyone that is interested. I will also be sharing this project with my college lacrosse team in hopes of spreading Lyle's story. Thank you.